Hey guys, just a quick little disclaimer before we start the video. We do know that this is out late. We do mention it twice during the Power Rankings video, so please do keep in mind that we are aware that this is late, and we do apologize once again. I'll apologize ahead of time, but it's just to let you know that we had a few complications in terms of scheduling, as well as graphics. Was the biggest thing because you guys requested something and we did come through for you, so you're about to see that in a few seconds right after we get past this slide. So anyway guys, thanks and enjoy watching.
What's going on, GBA people? It's your boy Jar and Aster back with week 5 for the GBA Power Rankings. I think we're just going to delve right into it, right Aster?
Absolutely, we're going to be a little late on this upload, so we might as well get it over with as quickly as possible. We're going to start off with our number 16 for this week. As you guys know, the only 0-5 team, Tup and the Pittsburgh Piratas. Tup, please stop bringing Life Orb, man, please. You're letting all of your Mons die earlier than they should be. This is why Jar and I say we don't really like Life Orb in League format unless it's absolutely necessary. That Coco plus Slowking combo at the end could have won the game on their own. I'm starting to notice that Tup's team lacks reliable momentum. What do I mean by that? Well, we won't count Coco because Volt plus Turn is solid, but the problem is that your best source of momentum gain is also your main source of offense in a lot of games. What are you Volt switching into and you turning into with Coco? A momentumless wall like Tangrowth and Slowking. I think if Slowking, formerly Slowbro, was something more like Vaporeon with Baton Pass or something else that could gain Tup momentum, able to generate a lot of threatening turns. But at the moment, it's just locked into this play from the back style that I don't see him being able to fix with the team that he has, unfortunately. It sucks for Tup. I would have really liked to see him come out strong this season, but not with that team. He lands once again at number 16 for me.
Yeah, I have to agree a lot with what you said. However, he's not out of it, of course. We still have a lot of weeks left. We could still turn it around. I agree with you. I mean, we both have constantly said Life Orb in League format is a very iffy item. We both try and bring it as little as possible. But Tup's prep was very interesting. You know, the Scizor was really good versus some of his opponent's team, but it really could not touch the likes of Lucario, Donphan, or Rotom Heat, which all can deal with it back relatively easily. The big thing is, why did he not have Grass Knot on the Tapu Koko for me? Like Lars, it's not even about like what Lars brought, it's about the prep. Like, if your opponent has a Donphan and it's their only Tapu Koko switch in, which it is kind of for Lars, I don't know why you're not running Grass Knot. I know you want to run momentum, but Tapu Koko, like Aster said, if you just want to keep running that momentum into those slow walls to beat those other walls, you're not gaining yourself anything. Use Tapu Koko as a wall breaker on your team, if you have to. I mean, so Aster, I completely agree with that point you made. Slowking was very cool versus Lars, but he really didn't have good walls that I think Slowking needed to come more defensively this week, because Lars was just able to take out the Tangrowth, and once that Tangrowth went down, oh my gosh, Tup was in so much trouble. That was my biggest thing. That Tangrowth was so key to wall so much of Lars's team. You had the Magearna, a few other things, but once it went down, things like the Primarina just started breaking through Tup's team, wearing them down to the end game, where Lars was just able to clean up the game with the Magearna against the Hitmontop. And it just felt like overall Tup was, like you said, just having trouble breaking Lars's team, which Lars does not traditionally have what you would call a bulky team. It's mostly offensive with a few bulkier mons like Donphan, Primarina, Decidueye. So I think that when you have trouble breaking that team, it is the source of wearing down your own offensive mons with Life Orb and not wanting to bring them in as much. And again, gaining momentum out into walls that can't retaliate or start breaking through at teams like that. So I have to agree with a lot of what you said. I know Tup can turn it around. I just think maybe he needs a few transactions to get some wall breakers or stuff like that. We'll see what he can do, but I am excited, and I do want to move on to Steve Battler X, one of my favorite people to talk about when we do these power rankings. I know he's one of your favorites as well, Aster. So another interesting week for Battler X. I just have to say, though, another controversy spiraling out of control with Battler X. Time travel, I was under the impression, was banned in the GBA. So I just don't know with Battler X at this point, guys. He's creating his own reality where he can cope with all these losses and trying to make excuses so he can keep the organization afloat. But as for his play and prep this week, Battler X is enjoying Hariyama more than I have seen anyone ever enjoy Hariyama in League format. So, I mean, more power to him on that one. Choice Scarf Starmie was interesting. I'm not sure if it was absolutely necessary. It really could have led to a lot of John's powerful wall breakers who resist one of Starmie's moves coming in, like Bulu if it clicks Thunderbolts, or Sneasel if it had clicked Psyshock. The Kartana was interesting, but it's your only Bulu check, Steve. Look at your team. It's obvious it was coming with HP Fire because Kartana's Spadef is actual garbage, and if Kartana went down, that Bulu was just going to sweep through your entire team, and we saw that. It just broke down Steve's team. He really didn't have an answer for it outside of Trick Room. Still no special attack on the Crest, so risking the bulky setup mons in front of it again, but I mean, whatever works for you. But yeah, I think he actually played pretty well. The bait with the Hariyama Zoroark to kill the Skarmory was really smart, because Skarmory was a little bit of an issue for Steve's team. However, I mean, like I said before, once Kartana went down, Steve was in a very tough position dealing with the likes of Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu, in my opinion, is probably the best Tapu, besides Lele, obviously, in League format. So when you lose your one check to it, and it can just start spamming those super powerful grass moves, or those Toxics, or subbing up, which is so threatening, then you're in a big trouble.
Yeah, Battlelore X has a good point when he says that it's tough to upload videos of you getting stomped on week after week for 4,000 plus people and still somehow keep it entertaining, so I do give him props for being able to do that. I also agree that Steve didn't play a bad game and that he got out-prepped by the Bulu, but prep is more than half of the battle, Steve. Steve is starting to see that synergy between Crest and Hariyama. That's probably why he's using Hariyama a little bit more, is because there's a lot of synergy between the two, between Resist and the fact that Crest gets up Trick Room for Hariyama. And I wish the rest of his team could support that core, perhaps with a good Wish Passer into both, because they function so well together, but Hariyama just gets chipped away so fast. And the rest of his offense is either too slow or too frail, like we saw with the Kartana, easy to take advantage of with HP Fire. I have to keep him at 15th because he hasn't shown me a win since week 1 Hacks Fest. But I like the improvement. I like where he's going with the season, as best as he can with the team that he drafted. Hopefully he can make a couple more transactions. I don't even know if he has any left. But
I actually don't think he does.
Yeah, I don't think he does either. But anyway, that's it for Steve. Let's move on to my number 14 and your number 13, actually. This is the first time that I've dropped this team this season from the position that they are in. So in this position, we have Duncan and the Free State Torracats. Jar, just hold on a second. Since when does Duncan have a Mandibuzz?
Honestly, Aster, I did not know dark flying types with Defog existed.
I don't know where that thing came from. What is this mon even?
I think that's a Hackmon.
All jokes aside, Duncan made some bad plays this game, and he'll agree with me. Again, some of his plays seemed panicked, like the Ice Shard on Pyukumuku, which to me made no sense. Actually, I take that back. It seemed more enraged than panicked, because he really just wanted to take care of that thing, but he was like, you know what, I'm just going to click Ice Shard, I just want damage on it. I understand that he didn't want to take damage from potential innards out, but you have to get rid of the thing that is such a huge problem to you. He made predictions and said them out loud, but didn't act on them, like the EQ on the Landorus. He had a safety net, but you need to be more aggressive when you're playing from the back like that, because not only can it pull you back into a game, but it can also calm you down when you net free kills, and it helps your confidence moving on into the remainder of the game. I finally moved Duncan out of the number 13 spot. He drops to 14 for me because he hasn't been winning, so that's it.
I mean, yeah, all the teams down here obviously are down here, so we have to try and figure out why some teams are down here, and we have to put some other teams a little bit lower. I have Duncan just a little bit higher because, you know, his prep was actually still really solid, actually, I thought. He did have a little help from Envy, which is fine getting help. I know we both, we help each other prep sometimes for our league matches. But, like I said, the Marowak was really cool, and it actually had so much potential versus Gator, was it this week, I believe? Yeah, Gator. So, that Marowak actually could have done so much work to Gator's team, but he sacked it turn 1 to a Mamoswine. And, like, I don't know, I listened to him, right? Like, I know why he stayed in. I don't understand why he stayed in, because when you have something that can put so much pressure on Gator's team, and I know you don't really have a Mamoswine switch in, very few teams do, but, I mean, you had a few things that could take an Earthquake, still outspeed it and revenge it. The one thing I would say was, don't get comfortable with Calm Mind Keldeo. I think that hurt him a little bit, that he's brought it, I believe, twice already this season. Gator knew it was a threat for his team. knew Duncan would probably bring it, and he was just able to slap the encore on the Whimsicott and Keldeo. Brush your hands off, dealt with, no problem. He was not able to break through a team that was a little Keldeo weak. I think honestly Specs might have been the set to go with this week, with maybe just Toxic to help wear down the Pukamaku, because that thing can break through that thing can break through a lot of Gators team. He does not really have a switch in, as we saw Mono week a few weeks ago running the Specs Greninja, just spamming Hydro Pump versus his team, put in so much work. The standard is not for Calm Mind was not there since there was a Whimsicott. I didn't understand that bring. Everything else though was a little standard, but also very well done. This was a long-ass fucking game, and it was very hard to watch all these turns. He basically just couldn't deal with Heatran, especially when Marowak went down so early, and that was like one of his things that can take a fire move, and without that, he has nothing to take a fire move. He had the Mandibuzz, which, who thought Mandibuzz could be leaned on for a team? I had no idea you could lean on a Mandibuzz for things you couldn't switch into. So, Duncan, great job figuring that out. But once that Mandibuzz took that gigantic damage from Galvantula, this game, you just knew it was just going to be in Gator's favor. He had nothing left to take on the Tran, and so that was it from there. For me, that was the big turning point. That is what cost Duncan this week. So I believe we can move on to my number 14 and your number 13. Is that correct, Aster? In Geo. Yeah, Geo and the San Francisco Giants. So there's no doubt Geo has had a very rough go of it lately. No doubt he's still riding his slide a little bit, but the direction Geo has gone in the last 2 weeks has shown me some positives in his prep. A few things I didn't understand this week. Heliolisk actually looked like a very, very good bring this week. Versus Steve-O's team, it revenges the Manaphy, it can Grass Knot the Hippo, it can really break down Steve-O's team, so it can even keep gaining him momentum with U-Turn, getting into some of his other threats he wanted to bring. But all things considered, he prepped very well. The biggest thing I saw was that Zapdos had a fantastic matchup versus Geo, just looking at the team preview, and he did not pack enough things for it. I don't believe Rhyperior came to this game, am I wrong? Yeah, so that was a very, very big thing. I know it had HP Water, but a solid rock, Rhyperior has no problem tanking an HP Water and knocking that thing way back with a Rock Blast or a Stone Edge, whatever you want to run. His play, I honestly just don't know what is holding Geo back at this point. Maybe it's the idea that Finny is not, I think a lot of people are discovering who have drafted it at least, that Finny is not as good in League format as maybe it was once thought to be. I still think his team is okay. Honestly, a well-played game on both sides. However, I don't think it was Geo's play as much as it was Steve-O's that swung this game this week.
Yeah, I honestly think Geo played this game very well. It came down to a 50-50 in the second to last turn, but I do understand that Geo's thought process for going for Giga Drain over Sludge Bomb. Even if the EQ was disabled, they could have had Ice Fang. It could have had anything for the Salamence specifically, of course. This was an extremely close game. I would have probably suggested bringing Heliolisk because outside of Lantern, nothing really takes a hit from that, and the Jasmine only have Swellow, which outspeeds it. With the lead matchup that happened this game, it was obviously difficult for Geo to get up rocks, but that would have helped him tremendously, probably even more than Toxic on Zapdos, because Cloyster would have straight died to the Outrage. Mence would have still been alive, Gengar undamaged. I moved up Geo one spot, mostly because I wanted to drop Duncan, primarily, but also because I felt that he still prepped and played very well this week, so not bad on Geo's part, but he still comes out with a loss, unfortunately.
Yeah, I understand wanting to move him up.
Yep, moving on, we have in our number 12 position, Dan. I moved Dan down 2 spots. You only moved him down 1, but we have him in the same position at number 12 this week. Dan, for me, you said it yourself. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Sacking the Clef, he could have kept health on that thing. That thing did a tremendous amount of damage. I can't really blame Dan. He did play a little bit on tilt. Just realizing that he had to get rid of Kyurem sub, that was the most important thing to him at that point. Because of the fact that the Electros got crit on turn 1, that was huge. That was a huge momentum swing for Chimp. We'll talk about it more when we get to Chimp, but Dan, unfortunately, not able to pull out a win this week. I believe he still has a 2-3 record, so he can definitely pull it back this season. We've seen him pull it back from very tough seasons, so I'm not too worried for him. But at the same time, like, he has to. I think the live comms might be hurting him. What do you think?
Yeah, I actually kind of understand. Like, I'm kind of in the between spot. Like, I'm still trying to figure out how I want to record my battles. Like, I've told you my way of kind of trying to calm myself down in league matches, because one thing I know a lot of coaches struggle with is just, like, the nerves before a league match. It is quite stressful for any league, just a small league as well. Just the pressure of wanting your prep to work out and stuff. And Dan actually stays pretty composed from what I can see in his live comm, so I don't think they're hurting him maybe as much. I just think it's maybe just like the shady problem we saw from a few seasons ago. Dan is undoubtedly a bigger YouTube channel. I wonder if his prep is just getting a little less time, because he does have the YouTube channel to think about, his other content to think about. But overall this week, I thought he played and prepped okay. You know, the Victini was well thought out, dealt with a ton of Chimp's team very well, very, very well. I loved the Clefable set. The Clefable was brilliant bring this week, because I've seen this Clefable before in League format in a game on the other side of my screen, and when that thing clicks Cosmic Power, it is terrifying, and it was almost impossible to stop. And honestly, he could have swept Chimp's team with a little help out. He just needed some damage. He just needed basically Volcanion to either have +2 Spadef before it came in, or dead, and he could have just needed full health after he could have soft-boiled up on the Gligger. If he had done that, he could have easily pulled this game out with that Clefable on its own. The Toxapex was a very necessary bring this week. He had a plan. Unfortunately, the hard switch into Curon by Chimp, which was a great play, I'll talk about that a little bit more, gave Chimp a crap ton of momentum, cost Dan the win con I was talking about. When it comes to his play, like I said, that hard switch cost Dan a win con. I think definitely could have literally swept Chimp's team, because it basically takes any hit after +1, +2. It takes any 2 hits from Chimp's team at +1, +2, which makes this team, especially since Chimp's Moonblast resist was a Volcanion, whose Spadef is not great, and it does not have recovery. So starting firing off some hits with that thing could have been really, really good for them. But Dan, I think one of the biggest misplays IMO was the sacking of the Electros very, very early. I know he wanted to try and keep it around, but he played it very aggressively, and he lost his only Thundy switch in. And at the end of the game, you saw what a gigantic threat that Thundy was to the rest of Dan's team, and it just basically was able to, with the help of a few other mons, clean up Dan's team nicely. And I think that's where it went wrong for him. Any closing thoughts on that game for you, Aster?
That's it.
Alright, then I think we can move on to Gator, who we both have in the same position. We're getting pretty good at this, Aster, I gotta say. We're kind of in the same thought process. But, so we just gotta talk about Gator's game versus Duncan a little bit ago. Long-ass game. But this was a game that makes me fear Gator as a league player. Prep, offensive Heatran was the correct set, the perfect amount of productive and innovative this week, in my opinion. The one thing I'll say is I think Gator has a lot of potential in Draft League. I think his team is limiting his creativity a lot. He did not draft very versatile mons. He drafted mons that are very good at what they do. He's got the likes of Mamoswine. He's got Diggersby, but they do the same thing. Strong, Earthquake, Physical, Spam. They have 2 different stabs, but I just think his creativity on his team is limited because he did not draft the most versatile mons. But this game makes me fear Gator as a player, because the Pyukumuku showed it can be a nice pivot. The Whimsicott was played beautifully around the Keldeo. The one thing I would have to say in Gator's prep was that I did not know he knew Mamoswine could run Sash. I thought that was illegal by this generation. So I give Gator a lot of props for that one. I thought it was illegal. I watch his videos. But, like I said, Gator has played solid most of the year, actually. It's just been a few occasions he's been outplayed or outprepped in a game. But he was very patient this game, and that was very telling for me. He waited until that Mandibuzz went down. He wore it down throughout the entire game. He took the chances he had to get damage off of it, preserved his win cons that he needed to clean Duncan's team up, like the Heatran. Wore his team down, and like I said, Duncan's team does not have a lot of recovery outside of Mandibuzz, so while it is a great lean, if it goes down, something like an offensive train you don't have a switch into is going to beat your team 1v1.
Yeah, there's not much for me to say about this game, honestly, because Gator, like you said, is very, very scary. And he did a very good job recognizing the Heatran put in so much work against Duncan's team. Every time it came in on something slower than it, pretty much got a kill. Great prep there. I love how Pyukumuku was able to wall almost everything on Duncan's side. That was hilarious. It was such a huge annoyance for Duncan. Something without any offensive moves, and you think about that, and it walls people out completely. I'm really excited to see how he's going to use it for the rest of the season, because I love seeing this thing in his hands, and I'm glad somebody drafted it, because we're getting to see just how good it can actually be. But
It's just too bad that Pokemon don't get a move. Like, almost every Pokemon should get a move like that if you click it, starts to wear something down. Maybe not Steel types or anything like that, but would wear Pokemon down over time, so you could deal with them easier. I think that'd be a cool idea for Pokemon to create.
Yeah, for sure. I think something maybe along the lines of, say, the name Toxic. That would be
Dude,
cool. Yeah.
Nice name.
For
On the spot, too.
Yeah,
Put the pressure
right on,
him.
right on. All right, moving on. We have Lars in at number 10. He moved up one spot for me. I think he stayed at your number 10 this week. Again, I moved him up because I really like what I saw from Lars this week. There we go. Lars finally showing us he knows how to pivot into his Magearna, well, and get those boosts. I love that U-turn crit into Magearna to get the Soul Heart. Very nice. Granted, it had to switch out on the next turn, but solid play from Lars, bringing very effective sets against Tup. Showing me that Lars, and I'll keep moving you up if you keep showing this to me, man.
Yeah, Lars did take down the number 16 team. That's why he's not moved up. He took down a team that so far does not have a win. I do think he is one of the better 2 and 3 teams at this point. That's why I have him so far up. But Lars's prep was good and innovative. He had some very smart innovations on his team. He brought a lot of offense versus Tup's team, which is very smart. He noticed Tup was having problems defensively keeping offense from breaking his team down. We've seen this the past few weeks with Dan, with Mono. Lars recognized that, brought his breakers, because Lars, I think no one will deny, has some of the best offense in the entire league. But he brought the things he needed to break Tup's team down, and the things he needed to switch into Tup's team, which everyone thought would be a very big problem for most teams at the beginning of the season. But, again, very well played, Lars. Once he saw there was no Blissey, and he took down the Tangrowth, he just started dropping special hits. Like, that was so smart. Getting Primarina in, wearing his team down. Tup said it in his own video, his team just basically got worn down. And that was Lars's plan from the start. Just wear this team down to a point where I can just clean up this game. He did it very well. This guy actually went for a Z move on the last turn. He's trying to cost me my bold prediction. You did not have to click Corkscrew Crash. That's why Z moves are garbage, in my opinion. At least attacking ones. Don't pick them. But, are you ready to move on to Crimson?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Alright, so we also have Crimson in the same place. Aster, we need to stop agreeing. This isn't going to be any fun if we're just
We're getting there. We have a
on
couple
time.
of disagreements down the line. Don't worry.
Alright, whatever. So, Crimson, I think, hurt himself this week in his prep. He had a lot of cool innovation, and he had a lot of good ideas, but the biggest thing for me was he got too creative this week, in my opinion. I don't think the Torn set had to be so creative this week. I think a standard Torn with U-turn and taunt instead of the 2 funny moves I have, keep the Heat Wave, Hurricane, in order to use his other offense to start breaking down Tom's team and not let Mons like P2 stall out his entire team by running taunt, I think that was a large part. I think the Torn set cost Crimson a lot of momentum because it wasn't running U-turn. The Magneton was smart. I have used Magnet Rise Magneton to trap things Steel type specifically, like a Earthquake, like a Bronzong in the past. You can really capitalize on them and take advantage. But this was also another long-ass game. I'll say that for every fucking game. Don't question it. I feel like the difference in this game was all about momentum. And Crimson, like I said, that Torn did lose him a little bit of momentum. And Tom kept his momentum up beautifully this week. And he had trouble dealing with the P2, so maybe Taunt would come in handy. Obviously, you can say Jar, hindsight 2020. Yeah, hindsight 2020, but Tom has things like a Vaporeon, a P2, a Celesteela. Taunt is never a bad idea versus a team like that. But honestly, it just came down to his team getting whittled by the hazards, the T-spikes, the rocks, and just he could not keep up with Tom's momentum. He was always on. It felt like Tom was always on the front foot this game. And it seems like Crimson cannot find his medium still. He's either go big or go home. Sadly, this week, Crimson, though, had to go home.
Yeah, I disagree. I think roleplay was a pretty cool bring on Crimson's part on the Torn. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see it. That's the problem. All in all, though, I think that there wasn't anything Crimson could have done to save himself in this game. When we get to Tom, I'll talk about it a little bit more. But Crimson didn't have, 1, a very good matchup, and 2, he never had the momentum. Magnet Rise on Magneton was also really cool. But I think there were better things that he could have probably brought, because if Tom brings Celesteela, it's going to bring Shedshell anyway. And he probably won't bring it against the team with Magneton. So I would have perhaps liked to see something like a Rock Polished Cobalion in that slot. He really enjoys using Cobalion, so I think that definitely could have put in work for him. Again, I'll say it, I don't think Crimson played too badly or prepped too badly. I think that he didn't have the right team to take on Tom's momentum and offense this week. That was the big thing for me.
Yeah, I do feel like you're right on the momentum thing. I brought that up myself. But I really agree with you on the point of the Magnet Rise Magneton. I've almost come to expect Magnet Rise from certain steel types now. Like, I've seen it on so many electric types, steel types, whatever you want to say. I believe, I know Mega Ampharos, I've seen that in League format before. I believe that was the GBA, actually, or maybe it was a different league. But certain things, like to avoid ground type moves, and they run that. So I feel like if Tom would have brought the Celesteela, it probably would have been Flamethrower with just enough special attack to probably 2-hit KO it, or Shed Shell, like you said. Like, there's no reason for them to just run that straightforward EQ. That's just lazy prep if they're doing that. They're not thinking it through fully. But I completely agree with what most you said.
Exactly. So moving on to John, we both have him at number 8 once again, staying on that same placement train. John this week, for me, great Bulu set, using it to capitalize on a mon that he hates facing in Cresselia. I also want to commend John on his Protect play against the Starmie. That is never a bad play. He said in his commentary that he didn't want to be an asshole and go for Protect, but the call out on the potential Scarf Starmie was very, very nice. I didn't move him this week because I think that 8th place, with the slight inconsistency that he's been showing, is pretty fair.
Yeah, I agree with that. John, never be afraid to be an asshole. We're here doing power rankings, ranking you guys subjectively in an order of 16. Trust us, we know all about being assholes. Don't be afraid, it's not so bad. But you're right, the inconsistency is also why I have John a little lower. I want to see him beat some higher up teams, be the best to beat the best. I've been saying that this season before I move him into the top spots. But his prep was actually really solid, smart. The Synchronoise Jolteon was actually very, very smart in my opinion to help him deal with hit Steve's Xurkitree. Not only check it, but hit it hard with a base. Is it 120?
Yep, 120
base
psychic.
120 psychic type move. So that's no laughing matter coming from a Jolteon. I think Aster, you were the one who actually told me about that move.
Yeah.
But yeah, Skarmory was a good bring. However, how Steve is using Zoroark reminds me of how I used it in the NPL Minors tournament. I'll plug myself here. Aster, I beat you to the punch this week. Got him. All right. But yeah, he's using it to take down a specific wall that walls a lot of his team. And I think the coaches have to start kind of realizing that. I know it's very, very risky to play like that, but if you're going to lose it anyway, if you get predicted by the Zoroark, it's the same 50-50 if it's the Mon-in. I mean, you know what I'm saying, Aster? And it's usually the Zoroark in first, because people try to pull off the Zoroark thing early, because if it takes rocks, it takes any damage at all, you've identified Zoroark. So I think you have to start expecting that. I wouldn't even call it a 50-50. I'd say it's more 60-40 in the early game. It's a Zoroark. If it's in on something, it shouldn't be. But the smartest prep on John's this week, bringing Volturn to get into his Bulu, which destroyed Steve's team. Sub was smart, showed some innovation with the... I loved Punishment Sneasel. That was brilliant. I've never thought to do that against for some... Do you know what Punishment does, Aster?
Doesn't it double in power?
No, it gets a boost in power for every stat boost your opponent has.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
To be afraid of Calm Mind Crest and to pull a Choice Banded Punishment, that was brilliant, and I amend John for that. I've never even thought of that in League format. But he played well, did what he needed to do. I mean, Ray said it in the draft analysis, hashtag RipRay, in the comment section below. John's speed could hurt him. Steve brought the Trick Room, but John played around it and was I want him to carry this momentum into next week.
Yeah,
Do you have any closing thoughts?
I think I've seen one person run Punishment for a Reuniclus, specifically. I've thought about it before as well, so I have seen it before, but no, still a very good bring on John's end. I think he did a good job this weekend. I want to keep seeing it, so just keep it up.
Yep, so I think this is where we differentiate a little bit. So, we're going to skip my number 7 for a little bit, and we are going to talk about Callum, who I believe is what's number is he on yours?
Callum is number 7 on mine, so he moved down one spot.
And he's number 6 on mine. So we're going to talk about Callum. The reason I did not move Callum again, he's been in the spot a few weeks for me, was because I just really don't have anyone I want to move above him right now. Tom has been on a little bit of a hot streak, so I'm keeping my eye on him. Callum is still on thin ice like I was talking about, being where he is, but he has to be careful because there's coaches like Lars, like Tom, like John, that could catch hot streaks and blaze to the top very, very fast. We know how talented they all are. So he will have to kick it into gear. He's been on a little bit of a bad streak lately, but he did get beat by a tremendous battler. There is no doubting that. And a top coach in the league, somebody we both rank very highly and have very high opinions of. So I don't want to jump on him right away. I also think his team matchup was bad. Rain versus Sand, Rain's always going to win. Period. So Callum's weather was immediately put at a disadvantage. He did have some things that could put in work versus Envy's team. Shaman specifically destroys Envy's team. Like, it gets the coverage. So if you run like an offensive with synthesis leftovers, he could have put in so much work and just started blasting through Envy's team. I don't believe that's the exact set he brought. But Crobat for the pivot was nice. But the play this week is what really cost Callum, in my opinion. Because, I'll just say this. Double switches are great. Alright? They are. They can help you gain momentum on mounts without it. However, if you're double switching to a point you're giving up damage on a team that has no recovery, like Envy's, that's a problem. Envy's team does not have reliable recovery, so if you're doubling out and not damaging his walls and getting the Figgy Berry on the Muck Popped, or like his signature healing up moves like that, you're not going to beat him. And we saw that this week. His team got worn down, and Envy just cleaned it up with his weather.
Yeah, I don't think you played a bad game of Pokemon, Callum. I do think you played a bad game of poker. What do I mean by that is that Envy, as we say in Smash, downloaded you very quickly. He recognized that you're switching to things, what you're switching to things were very early on, and mixed up his plays, and he got the upper hand on you because of that. This is not your fault at all, but it's something that everyone that plays this game needs to learn to do. Especially in League format. Envy is one of the best Draft League players right now, and he adapts. It's because he adapts extremely well to his opponents rather than his opponents' teams. He said it himself during his video, during his battle. He didn't want to be predictable when he went to Lando instead of Pelipper on the Excadrill. I sort of started seeing those unpredictable turns from you mid-game with the double switches, but it was a little too late already. But if you learn the combination of when and how to be unpredictable, I know that you will be so good at this format, and I can't wait to see that in the future. Right now, you moved down just one spot for me, because you're still doing pretty well, and you did lose to, well, I'll spoil it right away, my number 2 and Jar's number 3. We've had it that way for so many weeks now. So, not too much of a drop. I still think you played pretty solid, but like Jar said, wear down walls if you can. If you can go for that Earth Power on that Muck switching, do it. So...
what time did you get to bed after writing that poker one? Like 3 a.m. probably?
No. I was in bed pretty early.
All right, take Tom already.
All right, so with Tom is my number 5 actually, and Tom is your number 7. So this is our biggest difference this week. The reason I have Tom so high, I'll explain it now, is because I feel he has truly learned to use the team he drafted, and he did it very quickly. Other than his week 1 loss, he's only had a timer stall loss, which I felt was in his favor to win had that timer not been there in the first place. On top of that, Tom knew exactly how to pressure Crimson's team each and every turn. He is using his offense so well. Every offensive mon, except for Hitmonlee, because that's not offensive. He's using everything super well this season in comparison to last season. Thundy put in work. I did like that Tom had Life Orb on this specifically. I would have to say by far probably one of the best uses of Life Orb this season. Zygarde did massive damage. Darm was a momentum gaining monster. Even Signal Beam P2 did work this game. Like, he was able to keep Crimson from going on the offensive for more than one turn at all times during this game. So I'm really proud of Tom, and I think he had the best performance out of our 3-2 records this week, which lands him at my number 5. Explain to me why you have him at number 7, though.
Yeah, so I agree with almost everything you said, but I do like Callum and, spoiler alert, George a little bit more from my 3-2 teams. The reason is because, first of all, I just want to congratulate Tom, because no offense to Tom, I don't think anyone really expected him to be doing as well as he is right now, because he is on, like I said earlier, a bit of a hot streak, and I will eat my fucking words and say that Tom is playing very well right now. He's prepping well, and he's playing beautifully, like you said, keeping up the momentum perfectly. I want to see him rise up a little more with his record before moving him too much higher, because you look at the teams that he's beaten. Cooper was the only one in the higher region, and Cooper is no longer with us, unfortunately. So I just want to see a little bit more from Tom. Like I said, Callum's on thin ice, and I am very, very close with my 7 through 5. That's why I think they're the only ones we have mixed up. They're the only ones we're not too sure about. But Tom, like you said, prep, smart, matchup, I think was a little bit in his favor. I know you talked about that earlier. Kept momentum beautifully. I didn't personally know you could run a Choice Scarf on a Zydoge. I did not know that was a thing. But yeah, I think he played P2 really, really well. And P2's not an easy mon to play well. As bulky as it is, you have to play it correctly for it to put in work.
You have to be smart with it, yeah.
you have to be very smart with it because it can be setup fodder, and you don't want it to catch a toxic. You can't let it catch a knockoff. So he played it really well. I don't have too many complaints this week. I just want him to beat like one of those top teams before I move him into something like the top 5, which is kind of the best battlers we feel like in the league. So I covered Tom. Do you have any last thoughts you want to say about Tom?
Great job, man. That's literally all I can say is just great job. Keep it up. I want to see this, like Jar said, moving on into the weeks where you have to face the top teams.
Yeah, so we're moving on to my number 5, where I have George, and George lost this week. But I still have him in the top 5 because he lost to the number 1 team. What's the point of having the number 1 team if you don't expect teams to lose to them? But the reason he's still up here, he's got the same record as the other 2 3-2 teams, obviously. He's got a very respectable track record on the season still, so I don't want to hastily drop him because he lost to a team both of us have praised as being the best team and the best coach so far this year. So I'm going to stay him here for now. Everyone was kind of expecting this to be the Mono last week. I still picked Mono. I think, did you pick him as well? Yeah, so we both still expected Mono to win.
No, hold on. Before I eat my words and somebody calls me out on that, I'm pretty sure I chose George.
Alright, so you're the dumbass. I believe in Mono. But I don't know if George was rushed by his vacation this week with his prep. I thought that could have influenced it maybe a little more. It seemed mostly solid, but he did not have a lot for Miltank. I think if he would have looked at the matchup a little bit longer, looked at the team he had made, he would have thought, shit, I don't have a lot for Miltank, and maybe brought something like the Mienshao in order to do a lot of damage. Because Mienshao versus Mono's team is not too shabby. It actually does a lot of work. It gets aggro for things like the Buzz Wall, which Mono has used very well as a defensive wall. He did not have a lot for Florges. Mienshao gets Poison Jab, so if it's a Life Orb Regenerator set, I'm okay with Life Orb on Regenerator mons. That's why I'm okay with it with like on Torn and Mienshao. But I didn't see a team builder, so I don't really know how much I can say about his prep. But George did not play bad. He did not play great. He got outplayed by Mono, and he got predicted on that Mew and Gren. That was the turning point. That's when you knew, uh-oh, Mono is probably going to win that game. That Mew, George acknowledged that it wasn't the best play, but he needed to break through that Miltank. Mono saw it coming, and he made the play. I mean, that's pretty impressive on Mono's part to switch a Crit Ninja in from your normal type into a Mew, which could have any coverage. So I think that shows what a level Mono's on.
Yeah,
not
for sure.
necessarily
But
George.
at the same time, however, I do have to slightly disagree with you, and it'll make more sense when we get to my notes on Mono. But George made a crucial misprediction with that exact play. Not going. Had he gone for Nasty Plot on the Miltank switch out, this game was his. It was over. Realistically, the Psyshock was still a roll on the Buzzwole after rocks. I calced it with Mono's spread, but the roll was in George's favor. Also, the one time you don't want to get a freeze, and George gets the freeze with his Suicune. So very unfortunate there. I thought we were moving away from Haxie games with George, but it doesn't seem like it.
He can't play a week without Haxie.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. This game was great. It was actually awesome. I don't think that George played badly at all. Some things didn't go his way, which we just talked about, which is why I'm only dropping him down one spot into number 6. And the other reason I'm dropping him down is just because I wanted to put Tom a little bit higher because I was really impressed by him this week. But no, I mean, again, I'll explain it more when I get a little bit further. Also, the reason I'm not bringing George down all too far is because of Mono's play, and perhaps I'll get into that when we get there. But yeah, moving on. In at number 4, actually only dropping one spot, and this is actually warranted because this is one of our 4-1 record teams. We have Necro Stevo and the Utah Jasmine. So with Necro, I like this first week from him. I only moved him down because we purposely put Cooper at number 3 last week. That's the only reason he's moving down, realistically, because Cooper shouldn't have been in number 3 last week. I still have to see what he can do against the top team on our rankings because this was a really close match, but I did like his prep. In fact, he played it very much how Cooper would have, I feel. So I'm happy to see that.
I was literally going to say that.
Yeah,
when you let me talk.
I'm happy to see that we haven't lost that playstyle yet from the Jasmine. So regardless of him sitting at a 4-1 record, and until that changes, I don't see how we can move him down by any means.
Yeah, like you said, the PPL, very that's the one he comes from, correct?
Yeah,
PPL?
the PPL.
So, very respectable league. So, this coach is not going to be a joke. I believe, actually, Mono originally came from the PPL, so, yeah, so just watch out for him in a few years. But he is holding Cooper's legacy with a well-played Zapdos, and there's nothing more beautiful than a well-played Zapdos, watching it just destroy teams. Very, very solid prep, and this is the reason I didn't move him down too much, like you said. We did put Cooper in 3 on purpose last week, but the Zapdos was very smart, matched up superbly versus Geo. His prep may be a little bit too standard. A lot of his EV spreads were just the 252, 252, and not too much innovation with the specific move sets. But he was able to switch into most of Geo's offense and brought the offense he needed to break Geo's team. So I can't really fault him if the prep was simple, if it worked. You know, it's kind of that line between productive and innovative we talk about all the time. So I want to see him keep moving forward. He played extremely well. Like you said, Geo was no slouch this week. Geo's the number 14 slot, but he's a very scary coach to go up against at any time because he's creative, and if he is on his game, he is a threat to beat you and beat you any week. So he played straightforward. All he needed to win, like I said. I want to see a little bit more. I need to kind of develop an opinion on Steve-O before I start jumping him around the rankings.
Exactly.
I agree with you.
Same.
Yep, so we get to move on. I believe we are going to talk about my number 3 and your number 2 first, Envy. So, Envy, my friend, those grades are looking good still. You're doing okay. Played a very solid game. He beat a battler who's been doing well so far this season. But this game signified how dangerous Envy is as a battler, not even just in League format. League format definitely helps with this kind of style, but he revealed one of the reasons because he went from playing the last few weeks, like we talked about. He played super straightforward these last few weeks versus John, versus Geo. He stayed in. He was trying to sack mons that didn't work for him. He was just trying to play straightforward, get in his switch-ins when he could. But this week, he completely doubled on that. And that's why I kept saying for the past weeks, don't stop making predictions on Envy. He has the capability to play aggressive and play in front of you 3 turns ahead. And we saw that this week. He was ahead of Callum, it felt like, every turn. Like you said, Callum almost pulled it back towards the middle of the game, but by then it was a little too late. He didn't have the damage off he needed. He brought all the stuff he needed to. Rain versus the Sand was smart. Brought the Verizon, which had a great matchup. I call it Verizon. I do it. I'm sorry. I can't. He brought the Muck to deal with the Shaman, which was good, which was smart, because Shaman, like I said, destroys Envy's team, and I stand by that. The thing is a monster. But overall, he brought what he needed to win this game, and I will say it was the first non-Yachi Scarf Lando, I believe. So huzzah for progress. It was Pasho, but, you know, live and learn.
Yeah. Envy this week gets the title of Stunt Master 5000 for me. Honestly, like, going for HP
What are you,
fighting.
12?
Yeah, I am. All right. What are you going to do about it? He went for HP fighting at the perfect time again on the Excadrill switch-in. He mixed up his switch-ins to certain ones of Callum's threats. He just makes plays that are like 60% safe, but somehow reward him 90% of the time. It's incredible. I don't know how he does it, but he knows when to be a more aggressive player and when to be a more safe player. It's like he's got like 4 different personas when he's playing Pokemon, and you see that even in his regular Showdown lives. Like when he's playing, he mixes up his playstyle within the same video, and it's really, really good. I love seeing that from people. I love seeing that from players, and Envy embodies this, and this is why I love having him at number 2. And I'm not going to move him from there until he shows me like a crippling loss, because I'm always impressed by his play. Always.
Yeah, I agree with you, though, because something I know we both like to do is kind of scout how our opponents play, get a feel for them, and watch their videos, watch their replays, figure out which switches they like to make, what they like to lead with, and you can't do that with Envy. Like you said, he's got 4 different personas while he's playing. I don't know if we need to get him a doctor for multiple personality disorder, but I mean it's working for him. So until it doesn't, we will not take you to the ER, Envy.
Yeah. So that's it. Moving on, we can move on to Chimp, and Chimp has been very lucky this season. I don't say these things out of a hat, guys. He said it himself again immediately after he crit Dan's eel. It takes one turn like that to make your opponent play on tilt. I don't think that's exactly what happened to Dan, because he was able to somewhat keep his composure, but he did lose a very important glue Pokemon to his team that immediately, glue in quotations, and that immediately swung the game in Chimp's favor. I do think that Chimp played it right, knowing that he would need the Sash on Dugtrio intact if he wanted to guarantee a way to revenge kill the Haxorus. So instead using his Thundurus to pick off the Victini, knowing that its only remaining job was to knock out the Toxapex from there, and that he could deal with the Haxorus coming in. Very solid play by Chimp. So I can't drop him this week. In fact, I moved him up because of, once again, Cooper's positioning last week, the false positioning. But I'm curious to see when the luck is going to start turning on him.
I mean, I'm kind of where you are with Chimp, where you are with Envy. That's where I am with Chimp. Until he does something like a loss or gives me a reason to seriously move him down, I'm going to keep him up here because I do have a lot of faith in Chimpact in League format. He did take the time out of his day to let me know the hacks did not matter as much as people think, because Dan did click knockoff with the Electros, so yeah. I analyzed it, Chimp. You're good now. But the prep was pretty good. Chimp, you're right, played another very close game that could have gone either way, and the luck was a little bit on his side. I'm very interested to see how Chimp plays this rest of the season, because you're right, he's kind of been in that position where he's like not dominating. Like last season towards the end, he was just dominating everyone he played. He was running through teams, prepping really well. I'm interested. I don't know if it's the live comms, like we've said before. Live comms can hurt play sometimes because you get too focused on not actually thinking straight, just talking to the camera. I don't know if that's part of the case. And one thing I just want to say is that if Chimp had post-commed it, then he could have just said, I just predicted the eel to go for a knock, so it's cool. So, I mean, another struggle with live comm. The hacks looks like it matters more. Yeah. But he did go to the Zazo school of finishing an endgame without your opponent's help, so very good to him.
Yeah, I think for once, this is the very first week that we did see him use the Kirin Black effectively. It was a very obvious set, and Dan did predict it. He didn't know that the Kirin was coming with sub, but there was nothing he could do about it. At that point.
Well, the hard switching on the Toxpex was something that flashes me to that Chimp from last season who was just running through teams, you know?
Yeah.
That was a beautiful play. I mean, you risked the Scald, but I mean...
but there's no way that Dan goes for a Scald on a Volcanion.
Exactly. That's my point. That was a nice play by Chimp, safe, and it cost Dan his win con, like I talked about 5 times already, I'm sure. But we get to move on to the number 1. I'm sure that the fans are tired of hearing about the number 1, Monotui, and the Tampa Bay Luxuries. So... Mono played prepped well. Is that all I have to do?
I think that's all you have to do. I have roughly the same notes. I feel like he played very well. I will say, though, that I feel that this was one of his lesser performances.
Yes, I agree with that.
But you can't knock him down from number 1 when he beats Season 5 runner-up / Season 6 champion so convincingly. He played around the setup Mew perfectly, not giving it a chance to set up. Not giving it a setup target in Roserade either. He would have switched out of Roserade regardless if he got freezed or not. Overall, again, Mono is just so scary this season. Every season that he plays in, he's proven that he is the best player in Season 7 by far. We can't move him from number 1, especially after a win. He is now 5-0. It's ridiculous, guys. We're still waiting to see who's going to take him down.
Yeah, so far nobody has been able to crack Mono, and I agree with a lot of what you said. I actually thought, while his performance and his play was pretty good, I thought his prep was what really impressed me this week, actually, still. His prep was up to the par, it always has been. I think his play, like you said, a few turns, a little lackadaisical, not to the Mono standard, I suppose, but the Miltank ring was great. He played his, once he saw no Mienshao, I mean, he was just able to literally stall George's team out with that Mon. Calm Mind Florges was a great bring this week. It enabled him to take on the Raikou, and honestly, a lot of George's team. Drapion does not want to take +1 Moonblast from a Florges. Not much does, actually. If that is a Florges, basically, I think +1 almost amounts to max special attack when you have no investment. It's about close to that calc, so that is not something that wants to take that hit. So I liked Mono's prep. The Greninja was nice. He's actually utilizing Mons like Greninja, Buzzwole very, very well, playing them super smart, playing them safe, and even playing with them aggressively, like we saw this week with the Gren, the hard switch into the Mew when he had a normal type in front of a Mew that can have any coverage. Like I said, that shows me where Mono is, and I refuse to move him down. He will come first. For 2, I'm not gonna say it this time, but you guys know. You guys know.
It's gonna happen all season, guys. It's
gonna happen all season until he loses. Yeah. So, I think that about wraps it up, Aster.
That does. This is it for us, guys. Again, we do apologize for the little bit of lateness on the upload this week. Won't happen again next week. Promise you that. But we did enjoy a very interesting week, to say the least. Not too many huge moves, except for, in my case, Tom. But everybody staying pretty consistent to what they have been in the last few weeks. So. Yeah, very good power rankings. Thank you again to Jar for joining me, and thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like down below. Go and subscribe to all of the coaches that you haven't already. All of their links are in the description as well. Subscribe to the GBA channel if you want to keep seeing videos like this, and we will catch you guys later.
Later.